The story begins with Catherine Doyle, a girl of only 12 years old, who to many seems to be just another innocent child. However, those who observe her more closely soon realize that something is different. From the moment she was born, she has been surrounded by inexplicable mysteries, and as she grew older, she began to reveal secrets that no one else should know. Her middle-class family lives in a small village in rural France, where the neighbors are friendly but also harbor an air of distrust towards the girl. This is not surprising, as Catherine seems to have a unique connection to the supernatural, something that makes her an unsettling and intriguing presence. On a rainy afternoon, while the adults discuss trivial matters inside the house, Catherine finds herself alone, watching the storm through the window. Her eyes, deep and distant, seem to see something beyond the curtains of rain, something that, according to her, had been there since the founding of the village, something that only she could see. Catherine begins to tell stories. At first hesitantly, but soon with a confidence that surprises even those who know her. She speaks of ancient events, buried secrets, and mysteries that no one would ever dare to reveal. To many, she is just a child with a fertile imagination, but to others, her words are a disturbing omen of something much deeper and darker. And as the story unfolds, doubt begins to creep in. Is Catherine merely a talking child, or does she truly possess knowledge that defies time and space? As the days go by, the small village where Catherine lives begins to be overtaken by a growing atmosphere of unease. The stories she tells become increasingly detailed, and little by little, the villagers begin to realize that the girl knows things that should never be within the reach of a child. She speaks of the village's former inhabitants, of secrets kept for generations, and even of mysterious events that occurred long before she was born. Her father, Henry Doyle, a reserved man with a strong personality, tries to keep the family away from any kind of scandal. He believes Catherine's stories are mere inventions of a creative mind, but at the same time, something in his eyes betrays a certain unease. Henri knows the history of the village well and the legends that revolve around it. Silently, he fears what his daughter might be awakening. Her mother, Madeleine, on the other hand, is more receptive to her daughter's words, although she still tries to rationalize things. She sees in Catherine a special sensitivity, something that makes her believe that perhaps somehow her daughter is connected to something beyond what the eyes can see. Madeleine has always believed that the village, with its old-world charm and traditions, hid something. Catherine, for her, is a key to unlocking this mystery. Meanwhile, the neighbors begin to distance themselves from the Doyle family. Some say Catherine is a sign of something bad, others fear her as some kind of evil prophet. The girl, who was once just a curious child, begins to become a taboo. Her childhood friends, once close, now avoid her, and the village children whisper about her, spreading increasingly strange rumors. Amidst all this, Catherine continues talking. She tells stories about old houses that were hidden for reasons no one remembers anymore, about secret symbols carved into trees that adults have never seen, and about a tragic event that, according to her, happened long ago, but that no one dares to discuss. Among the village's older residents, some legends say that a great tragedy occurred in the early days of the village's founding. Many believe that Catherine, with her peculiar behavior, is the reincarnation of a former resident who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. These rumors, though unproven, are gaining traction as the girl reveals more secrets about the village's past. The village where Catherine Doyle grows up, located in the French countryside, is peaceful and ancient, marked by a history that stretches back centuries. The architecture of the houses and narrow streets reflects the traditions and mysteries of times past. It is in this setting that the girl begins to stand out, not only for her appearance, but for the peculiar aura that surrounds her. She possesses an intelligence and a worldview that far surpass her years, something that disturbs even the oldest members of the community. Henry Doyle, Catherine's father, is a man of strong and rigid personality. He has always been respected by everyone in the village, known for his seriousness and his ability to keep the family together despite difficulties. However, something in his behavior begins to change when Catherine starts talking about the village's ancient secrets. He tries to maintain control of the situation, insisting that his daughter is only joking, but his eyes, always so firm, now reflect a certain apprehension. Henri knows the village's history well. He knows the rumors and legends that circulate among the elders, and he fears that Catherine is meddling in something dangerous. Madeleine, Catherine's mother, has a different kind of relationship with her daughter. She has always believed that Catherine possesses something special, a gift that transcends explanation. Madeleine feels a connection with her daughter that goes beyond words. When Catherine begins to speak about the mysteries of the village's past, Madeleine doesn't hesitate to believe her. She sees in her daughter a kind of key to unlocking what many try to hide. She encourages her to keep talking, although deep down she knows that Catherine's words may not be just childish imagination. Madeleine wonders if the girl is being guided by something greater than herself. Meanwhile, Catherine doesn't care about the suspicious glances from the villagers. For her, what matters is what she sees and feels, things that others can't understand. She talks about the old church which, according to her, was built on a cemetery that was never properly consecrated. She describes details about the cemetery that no one else knows, such as the tombstones that mysteriously disappear and the symbols that appear on the ground during full moon nights. Catherine also mentions the abandoned house on the outskirts of the village, a house that everyone avoids, but which she describes with such clarity that even the most skeptical begin to doubt its reality. Her childhood friends, who once loved playing with her in the village streets, are beginning to distance themselves. Catherine's eccentric behavior makes them question whether she is somehow becoming a strange figure. The once innocent games now become moments of discomfort. The other children whisper behind Catherine's back, saying that she is different, that there is something about her that bothers them. The other children's parents, in turn, speak softly, afraid that what Catherine says might be true. They fear that, by getting closer to Catherine, something from the village's ancient mystery will affect them as well. Despite this, Catherine continues to tell her stories. She speaks of the former inhabitants who, according to her, disappeared without a trace. The girl describes events that occurred more than 100 years ago, such as a large celebration held in the village square where a tragedy occurred but which no one speaks of. She mentions a name, a certain Monsieur Dupont, who was the last to see the famous abandoned house inhabited, but according to her, no one remembers him, and even the village records seem erased. Catherine also speaks of a peculiar symbol that appears in certain places during foggy nights, and which she believes to be a warning of something to come. Henri tries to ignore his daughter's words, but it's impossible not to notice that the mystery she reveals is beginning to unsettle him. He remembers the stories he heard from his own parents, stories he preferred to keep hidden, and now he realizes that Catherine is somehow drawing attention to what should remain forgotten. Henri, with his protective attitude, tries to shield his daughter from the rumors, but it's clear that the truth is getting closer, and the girl doesn't seem willing to stop. As Catherine continues to unearth the mysteries of the village, the atmosphere around her grows increasingly tense. The small, once peaceful community begins to live with a growing sense of unease. Catherine's revelations about the village's hidden past do not go unnoticed, and soon the residents begin to act more cautiously around her. Some try to avoid the girl, while others begin to question whether her words might be more than just childish ramblings. Henri, worried about the impact Catherine's stories are having, decides to distance her from it all. He believes that if he can isolate her, the situation will calm down. However, Catherine remains undeterred. She knows something important is happening and is determined to uncover the truth. The small village, with its narrow streets and old houses, holds secrets that seem to resist the passage of time, and she feels she's about to unravel one of them. Each new story she tells is a step closer to the truth. Meanwhile, Madeleine, who has always been more sensitive to her daughter's behavior, begins to question her own feelings. She sees Catherine as a special child, a child with a gift she herself doesn't fully understand. But as tension grows in the village, Madeleine finds herself torn between supporting her daughter and protecting her family. She notices that the villagers are beginning to distance themselves from her family, and whispers about Catherine begin to spread. What once seemed like a simple child's whim now takes on greater proportions, and Madeleine begins to doubt her own sanity. Catherine's secrets aren't the only things stirring up the village. In the following days, strange events begin to occur. One night, the local church, which had always been a point of reference and safety for the residents, begins to emit unusual sounds. Some people swear they hear whispers coming from inside, as if someone were trying to communicate something. The elders, those who still remember the legends of the village's founding, begin to speak of the ancient curses that haunt the place. They speak of a pact sealed long ago, which they say should never be broken. And curiously, Catherine is the only one who seems to understand the meaning of these words. On another occasion, during one of Catherine's walks through the forest near the village, she finds something peculiar, a large stone covered in inscriptions she had never seen before. With Madeleine's help, she tries to decipher the symbols, but something prevents her from continuing. She feels she is close to discovering something fundamental, but with each step, something pushes her back. Catherine begins to believe she is being watched, as if an invisible presence were waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Tension reaches its peak when a series of inexplicable events begin to occur in the Doyle home. At night, objects begin to move on their own, doors slam shut without explanation, and on occasion, Catherine's voice seems to echo through the house, whispering ancient secrets she has never told anyone. Henri, who had previously tried to rationalize the situation, begins to feel powerless in the face of the phenomena occurring in his home. He no longer knows if what is happening is a figment of his daughter's imagination or if something supernatural is actually at play. The fearful community begins to divide. Some believe Catherine is being manipulated by forces beyond her comprehension, while others accuse her of causing the strange events. Tensions escalate to the point where an extraordinary village meeting is called. During this meeting, the villagers discuss what to do with Catherine. Some ask that she be removed from the village, while others want to seek a more drastic solution. The small, once united community now finds itself on the brink of disintegration, all because of a girl and her stories that no one else understands. Henri, distressed, makes a difficult decision. He must protect his daughter, but he also needs to maintain peace in the village. He knows that if Catherine continues to reveal more secrets, something worse could happen. But at the same time, he cannot deny that his daughter is at the center of something that goes beyond what he ever imagined. As tension spreads through the village, other layers of mystery begin to emerge, further deepening the conflict. Catherine, although seemingly the key to unlocking the village's secrets, is not the only one with a hidden past. Other characters begin to reveal their own stories, which somehow intertwine with the main narrative, creating a complex web of mysteries that challenge the perception of the villagers. Madeleine, Catherine's mother, begins to be haunted by her own memories. She remembers when she was young and heard stories about the village that her parents never told her. She always had a feeling that something was wrong, something that wasn't shared by the older generations. At the time, she thought these stories were just superstitions, But now, as the strange events intensify, she begins to question the truth behind these old legends. Madeleine finds an old diary in a forgotten corner of her house, belonging to her grandmother, and begins to read about the pacts made with mysterious forces to protect the village. With each page, she realizes that her own family may be connected to these ancient events, which puts her in a delicate position, torn between protecting her daughter and confronting a dark legacy she can no longer ignore. Meanwhile, Henri, though trying to maintain a facade of rationality, finds himself increasingly entangled in the internal tensions. He begins to investigate the village's past on his own and finds old records of secret meetings held in the church, where the villagers apparently discussed ancient rituals and pacts made with entities that guaranteed the village's prosperity. However, the more he investigates, the more convinced he becomes that something truly dark permeates the place. Henri begins to wonder if the stories Catherine tells are, in fact, fragments of a truth that the villagers prefer to forget. Meanwhile, the village is in a growing state of disarray. During a stormy night, a long-time resident, an elderly gentleman known as Monsieur Rousseau, disappears without a trace. His house, on the outskirts of the village, is intact, but he was last seen arguing with Catherine shortly before vanishing. The now fearful villagers begin to question whether Rousseau's disappearance has anything to do with the stories Catherine has been revealing. Some whisper about the idea that he knew too much and that somehow he had been silenced by forces beyond human comprehension. Meanwhile, Catherine seems increasingly connected to these mysterious forces. On several occasions, she is seen walking through the forest at night, towards an ancient altar where no one dares to go. The villagers, now in a panic, begin to take drastic measures to deal with what they consider a growing threat. Some begin to talk about exorcisms and rituals to try to ward off the evil that they believe Catherine has brought to the village. The story of an ancient curse spreads like wildfire, and the people begin to divide between those who want to confront the mystery and those who wish to flee. Catherine, for her part, shows no fear. She seems increasingly at ease with the revelations she makes, as if an invisible force were guiding her. Her visions become more vivid and her accounts more detailed. She speaks of a protective entity, a being that, according to her, was invoked by the village's founders to protect the place against a greater evil. However, Catherine also speaks of a broken balance, which, if not restored, could lead the village to a tragic fate. She feels that somehow she is the key to restoring this balance, but she doesn't know exactly how. Henri and Madeleine, now aware that their actions may have irreversible consequences, try to control the situation, but realize they are losing control. Fear and distrust among the villagers grow, and the village, which has always been a place of peace, transforms into a psychological battleground. The villagers become paranoid, and old friendships begin to disintegrate as tensions rise. Catherine, once just a curious child, now finds herself at the center of a battle that transcends the limits of reason. She is torn between the desire to understand the mysteries surrounding her and the fear of what those secrets might mean for her and those around her. And as the village prepares for what could be the end of everything they know, she senses that something is about to happen, something that will change her family's history forever. Tension in the village reaches its peak when, during a full moon night, an unexpected event changes the course of everything. Catherine, who until then had been uncovering fragments of ancient secrets, finally reveals something that changes everyone's perspective: the true nature of the evil plaguing the village and the crucial role she plays in it. That night, a sudden storm engulfs the village, with strong winds and lightning illuminating the dark sky. While the villagers lock themselves in their homes, Catherine is once again seen walking through the forest, as if drawn by an invisible force. Henri, no longer able to ignore what is happening, decides to follow her. He believes he can stop her from doing something irreversible, but when he reaches the forest, what he finds is something he never imagined possible. In the heart of the forest, near the ancient altar, Catherine stands in a trance-like state, as if in direct communication with something beyond this world. She whispers words in a language Henri cannot understand, and suddenly an intense light begins to emanate from the altar. The sky seems to open, and an invisible presence fills the surrounding space. Catherine, now with an uncanny calm, turns to her father and reveals a secret that changes everything. She has been chosen to restore an ancient pact, made by the village's founders, with a protective entity. This pact, broken for generations, needs to be restored to prevent a dark force, forgotten by time, from being unleashed. Henri, stunned and fearful, tries to pull his daughter away from the altar, but something stops him. An invisible force seems to take over the place, and he feels a growing pressure, as if escape were impossible. He begins to understand that Catherine's story was not just a series of childish fabrications, but something much deeper and more dangerous. The entire village, the secrets, the legends, everything is part of a much larger web than he ever imagined. Meanwhile, Madeleine, who had distanced herself from the situation, arrives and witnesses what is happening. She sees Catherine in an almost mystical state, as if she were the intermediary between the visible and invisible worlds. Catherine looks her in the eyes and with a disturbing calm says, "You knew what was happening, Mother. You always knew." These words strike Madeleine like a blade, and for a moment she doubts everything she believed. She always felt there was something in her family that couldn't be explained, but now she realizes that Catherine is, in fact, the key to everything. Henri, in a last effort to protect his daughter, tries to stop what is happening, but the light emanating from the altar intensifies. He senses an imminent presence, as if something is about to materialize before his eyes. The light then suddenly dims, and for a brief moment, everything is silent. The storm also calms down, and the feeling of pressure disappears. However, what the two don't know is that by partially restoring the pact, Catherine has opened a door to what lay dormant. She believes she has done what needed to be done to prevent evil from being unleashed, but in doing so, she has awakened something she could never have imagined, a dark force that had already been sealed deep within the earth, an ancient entity that is now aware of her presence and ready to manifest itself again. Catherine's world begins to crumble. She believed she was doing the right thing, but what she did has actually put her on a path of no return. The villagers, now more aware of what's at stake, begin to unite, but their intentions differ. Some believe Catherine is the key to saving the village, while others fear she is responsible for what is to come. Meanwhile, the dark force that Catherine inadvertently unleashed begins to manifest itself. Small signs begin to appear, dead animals, doors opening on their own, and a growing sense of despair in the air. The once peaceful village now lives with the constant feeling that something is about to happen. And at the center of it all is Catherine, the child who unwittingly opened the door to an evil she can no longer control. Following Catherine's revelation and the partial restoration of the pact, the consequences begin to spread through the village like an uncontrollable wave of panic. What seemed to be a solution to an ancient mystery ends up turning into an impending nightmare. The dark force that Catherine awakened begins to show its presence more clearly, and as the days go by, the village is gripped by a growing atmosphere of despair. Henri, who initially believed he could protect his daughter, finds himself unable to stop the unfolding events. He begins to realize that in trying to stop Catherine, he inadvertently helped precipitate the disaster. Things he considered simple legends now become a terrifying reality. The ancient symbols Catherine mentioned manifest on the walls of the houses, and an oppressive energy begins to envelop the village. fear spreads, and the once united villagers begin to divide. Some believe Catherine may be the salvation, the key to resolving the chaos, while others hold her responsible for the impending catastrophe. Madeleine, in an internal struggle, begins to question her own choices. She always believed Catherine had a special connection, but now, as events take on increasingly dangerous proportions, she begins to wonder if she should have intervened sooner. Madeleine knows that her daughter, even with good intentions, is involved in something much bigger than she can comprehend. A mother's love is strong, but doubt begins to gnaw at Madeleine's heart. She finds herself torn between supporting her daughter, who believes she is doing the right thing, and the need to protect the village from what she may have inadvertently unleashed. Meanwhile, Catherine, who was so confident in her mission, begins to feel the weight of the consequences. Each day, she realizes that the evil she has awakened is growing in strength and influence. The dark presence is no longer just a feeling, it is now very real, influencing the people around her. Catherine begins to hear whispers, visions that surround her, and makes her question whether she can truly control what she has started. Every time she tries to focus on what she must do to correct her mistake, the energy around her prevents her. She feels a growing pressure, as if the very earth beneath her feet is becoming colder and more distant. One night, when the village is completely immersed in an unusual silence, a series of supernatural phenomena reaches its peak. The sky, which should be clear, becomes covered in a thick fog, and in the center of the square, a gigantic shadow begins to form. It is not a human figure, but a presence that seems to envelop the entire village in its darkness. People begin to become paralyzed, unable to move or speak, as if the dark force itself had taken over their bodies. The atmosphere is heavy, and the fear is palpable. Henri, Madeleine, and Catherine are in the center of the square when this happens, and for the first time they feel the true magnitude of the threat they face. Henri tries to scream, but his voice fails him, while Madeleine holds Catherine tightly, as if her daughter were the only thing that could stop what is happening. Catherine, with tears in her eyes, finally understands that she is in fact the key to restoring balance. But at the same time, she realizes that if she doesn't act correctly, she could lose everything she loves. The weight of responsibility is overwhelming. With the village in a panic, people begin searching for answers. Some decide to distance themselves, to flee far from what they cannot understand, while others begin to look for ways to undo what has been done. The internal conflict among the villagers grows, and although some want to protect Catherine, others believe that the only solution is to remove her, since she, in their view, is the source of the problem. Catherine, in a last-ditch effort, decides she needs to restore the pact she partially broke, but now with a new understanding of what's at stake. She begins to prepare for a ritual, a sacrifice that could put everything back in its place, but which could also cost her her own life. Henri and Madeleine, knowing the risk their daughter is taking, try to stop her, but she is determined. The village is lost without it, and she is the only one who can reverse the curse she unwittingly unleashed. As the ritual approaches, the villagers, now more aware of the power Catherine wields, begin to form factions. There are those who believe she is salvation, and those who see her as evil incarnate. The village, once a peaceful community, is now divided, with fear and hope vying for attention. The ritual is about to begin, and the entire village is in a state of uncertainty and fear. Catherine, with renewed determination, feels that the time has come to face the consequences of her actions. She now fully understands the weight of what she holds in her hands. She's not merely trying to correct a mistake, but is being called upon to restore the balance of an entire village, whose roots are intertwined with powerful and ancient forces. Henri, who had tried to protect his daughter from everything she was now facing, finds himself powerless in the face of the situation. He realizes that the only way to truly save Catherine and the village is to allow her to follow her own path. Although fear still consumes him, he understands that for his daughter to grow and become who she's meant to be, she needs to go through this experience, not as a frightened child, but as someone capable of confronting her own shadows. Madeleine, for her part, faces an even deeper conflict. She sees her daughter, whom she has always loved and protected, now on a path that could be fatal. A mother's love compels her to prevent Catherine from going further, but at the same time, she feels that her daughter, now more than ever, is becoming a woman, someone who needs to make her own choices. Madeleine finally accepts that the only way to help Catherine is to support her, even if it means risking her own daughter's life. She makes the decision to help her complete the ritual, believing that by doing so, she will be allowing Catherine to mature and take control of her destiny. Catherine, on the other hand, is more than prepared for what is about to happen. Throughout her journey, she has learned to cope with fear and doubt. When she began speaking about the mysteries of the village, she never imagined her words would have such an impact. Now she realizes that everything that has happened, all the twists and turns and moments of uncertainty, were essential parts of her journey to becoming who she was meant to be. What she once saw as a curse now seems more like a calling. She has become not only the key to restoring balance, but also the leader the village needed. The ritual begins, and Catherine follows the instructions she found in the ancient diaries and legends she unearthed. The energy around her is palpable, and as she approaches the altar, she feels the weight of past lives resting on the shoulders of her family and village. The symbols she saw in the visions begin to materialize around her, and as she recites the ancient words, a soft light begins to emanate from the altar, as if the village's own past were being called to life. As Catherine progresses, something surprising happens. She not only begins to restore the broken pact, but also begins to understand the true nature of the dark force threatening the village. In a moment of revelation, she realizes that evil is not something to be defeated, but something to be understood and integrated. The evil that has been trapped for so long is not an external entity, but a forgotten part of everyone in the village, a reflection of the shadows each person carries within themselves. Catherine understands that to bring true peace, she must confront these shadows within herself, and also within everyone who lives in the village. Henri and Madeleine watch in silence, finally realizing the true magnitude of what their daughter is accomplishing. She is not only restoring an ancient pact, but is helping everyone around her confront and embrace what has been hidden, both in the past and in the present. This journey, though full of suffering and challenges, is the key to true liberation. Catherine, without hesitation, moves forward, facing the dark forces within herself and around her. As the ritual reaches its climax, the light emanating from the altar intensifies, enveloping the entire village. The signs of evil begin to dissipate, and the oppressive feeling that hung over the place begins to ease. Catherine, now stronger than ever, feels a wave of relief and peace, as if she has finally found her true purpose. Balance has been restored, but in return, she has also learned the most important lesson of all. True power does not come from the ability to defeat external enemies, but from conquering the shadows within herself. Henri and Madeleine, now witnesses to their daughter's growth and transformation, feel a mixture of pride and sorrow. They know that Catherine, the girl they once feared, is now a young woman with a profound understanding of the world and her place in it. They recognize that however difficult it may have been, this process was necessary for her to mature and fulfill her destiny. The village, now peaceful again, begins to rebuild, and the inhabitants, though still fearful of the forces that once dominated their home, now know that Catherine was the key to bringing balance and peace back. She is no longer seen as an innocent child, but as a wise and strong woman who confronted the depths of the mystery and ultimately overcame the forces that threatened to destroy everything they knew. The village, once plunged into panic and despair, now experiences a temporary peace. The dark energy that had spread, consumed and grounded the inhabitants has finally dissipated, but the feeling that something is still to come lingers in the air. Catherine, although she has fulfilled her part of the ritual that restored balance, feels that the battle is not over. Something within her still pulsates with the same intensity, as if one last phase is needed to truly close the cycle. Henri and Madeleine, though relieved, also cannot shake the weight of everything that has happened. They see their daughter transformed, more mature, stronger, but also marked by the scars of a journey that no one, not even they, had anticipated. They know that what happened was not just a series of supernatural events, but a profound and transformative journey, both for Catherine and for the village itself. But however much everything has calmed down, there is a growing sense that something is about to happen, something that will challenge everything they knew. Catherine, with her heightened sensitivity, begins to perceive signs that the peace the village enjoys is, in fact, temporary. She feels, almost physically, the tension in the small things, the wind that suddenly changes direction, the furtive glances of the villagers, the rustling of dry leaves in the trees. She knows that the pact she restored was only one step, and that the true climax of the story is yet to come. Something is about to happen, and she is the only one capable of preventing the evil, now dormant, from being unleashed once and for all. The villagers, though grateful for Catherine's intervention, begin to feel the pressure of a reality that has changed forever. The village will never be the same again. The memory of the events that transpired is etched in their minds, and the belief in ancient legends, pacts, and dark forces that were once just stories now becomes a living part of the village's history. Some, who previously doubted Catherine, now look at her with a mixture of respect and fear. Others, still terrified by the events, begin to search for a way to keep evil at bay, as if they fear that something might happen again at any moment. Henri and Madeleine try to resume their daily lives, but they know it's impossible. Catherine, now more connected to the village's mysteries than ever, feels the village needs more than just a temporary solution. She senses that true healing will come when all the villagers confront the ghosts of the past, the shadows of what has been hidden, and the scars that still mark the place. Catherine knows this will require courage and a collective transformation. She must guide them, but this demands one last test of her strength and wisdom. Meanwhile, a new kind of tension begins to emerge among the villagers. Some turn against Catherine, accusing her of bringing forth forces that, though seemingly controlled, could once again harm everyone. They meet secretly, discussing how they can protect the village forever. A minority begins to seek alternatives, and in their search, many speak of ancient rituals that can seal the village permanently, ensuring that evil does not return. However, Catherine, who has already experienced the power of these practices, knows that this would not be a true solution. Rituals cannot be used as a way to conceal reality. They must be confronted head-on. Catherine, burdened with the responsibility of handling these new challenges, feels stronger than ever, but also aware that the road ahead will be arduous. For her, the next step is more than just facing what lies ahead. She needs to help everyone in the village confront their own shadows so they can find true peace. And to achieve this, she understands that the final stage of her journey will be the most difficult, restoring each person's inner balance, confronting their own truths, and helping them overcome the fear that still holds them captive. As night falls, Catherine prepares for what she knows to be the final event. She feels that by completing her assigned task, she will finally be able to heal the village once and for all. But in her heart, she knows this will require further sacrifices, and that the fate of everyone in the village is now intertwined with hers. The silence before the climax is palpable, and the future of Catherine and the village hangs by a thread. Everything she has been through, all the hardships, doubts and challenges have led her to this point. She is the only one capable of taking the final step, but is she ready for what is to come? And will the villagers finally be able to confront their own demons? The village, now in a state of tense silence, prepares for the decisive moment. Catherine, with a heavy but determined heart, feels that the time has come to face the final stage of her journey. She knew that the final battle would not only be against the dark forces that threatened the village, but against the inner shadows that still lived within each villager, including herself. The true test would come when all the hidden secrets were brought to light and confronted head-on. That night, the full moon shines intensely over the village, reflecting the mystical energy that still permeates the air. Catherine walks to the altar, the place where it all began and where it must now end. She knows she needs to make one last sacrifice to seal the peace once and for all, but what she doesn't know is that this sacrifice will be far greater than she imagined. Henri and Madeleine, who now fully understand Catherine's role, walk to the altar with her. But as they approach, a new obstacle appears. The sky, which had previously seemed calm, begins to darken, with dark clouds obscuring the moon and creating a nightmarish atmosphere. The villagers, who had been waiting in their homes, now gather at a distance, watching with a mixture of fear and hope. Some believe that Catherine is the only one capable of saving the village, while others fear that she is, in fact, bringing destruction. When Catherine reaches the altar, a wave of powerful energy envelops her, and she feels the presence of the dark force stronger than ever. She knows she's at the center of it all, that she, as the key to restoring balance, needs to make the final move to close the cycle. She begins to recite the ancient words of the pact, but this time the words do not come easily. They are muffled, almost as if the dark force itself were trying to prevent her action. At this moment, the true challenge is revealed. Catherine, while reciting the ritual, begins to confront her own shadow. She sees a distorted version of herself, full of anger, doubt, and fear. This version, a manifestation of the darkest parts of her being, tries to convince her to give up, to stop fighting. It whispers cruel words, saying that she will never be good enough, that the village is destined for destruction, and that she, Catherine, will never be able to fulfill her destiny. But Catherine, with the strength of all she has learned, does not hesitate. She faces her shadow and, in doing so, understands that the true battle was never against external forces, but against the parts of herself she feared. She confronts her doubts, her insecurity, and the anger that has consumed her for so long. With each word of the ritual, she feels these shadows dissipating, as if her own darkness were being absorbed by the light of truth. As she confronts her shadow and reconciles with her own weaknesses, the light around her begins to shine more brightly. The dark presence that had taken over the village begins to recede, as if being driven out by Catherine's own strength. The sky clears, and the dark clouds dissipate, revealing the full moon once more. The village, once immersed in darkness, begins to breathe again, and a sense of peace begins to spread. Henri and Madeleine, watching from afar, see their daughter, now stronger than ever. She is no longer the frightened child who, at the beginning, had to learn to cope with the mysteries of the village. She has become a woman capable of facing the darkest forces, not only in the world around her, but within herself. She has won the last battle, the inner battle, and in doing so has restored balance to the village. When the ritual finally comes to an end, the village is silent. The evil that threatened to consume them has finally been defeated. But Catherine, looking around, knows that it wasn't just a fight against external forces. It was a fight for her own identity, for self-acceptance, and for the understanding that to bring true peace, she would need to reconcile with her own darkness. As the moonlight shines on the altar, Catherine turns to her parents. Henri, with tears in his eyes, hugs her tightly, knowing that his daughter not only saved the village, but also grew beyond his expectations. Madeline, who had so long worried about Catherine's fate, now smiles with pride. They know that even though evil has been defeated, the true climax of that journey was Catherine's transformation. The village, now at peace, begins to rebuild, but it will never be the same. The villagers, who once feared the unknown, now know that true strength lies not only in fighting evil, but in confronting and understanding it. Catherine, with the burden of the past finally lifted, can now move forward with a promising future ahead. After the intense battle at the altar, the village is finally at peace. The evil that once threatened to devour everything they loved has been defeated, but the effects of this journey transcend any external threat. Catherine, now transformed and stronger than she could ever have imagined, watches the dawn slowly rising over the hills. The sun rises, illuminating the village which, though marked by the darkness that nearly destroyed it, now shines with a renewed light. Henri and Madeleine, who were by her side during the ritual, now watch her with looks of pride and gratitude. They realize that, although they feared for their daughter throughout the journey, it was she who, in the end, guided them back to hope. Catherine is no longer the innocent child they tried to protect, but a strong and wise woman, with a deep understanding of the world and her own destiny. The village, once burdened by fear and forgotten legends, now breathes freely. The marks of the dark presence are slowly beginning to fade. The villagers, once divided, now unite around a new purpose, to preserve peace and ensure that the evil that nearly consumed them never returns. But more importantly, they have learned a valuable lesson. True peace does not come from fighting evil, but from accepting that darkness is a part of us all, and that by confronting it, we can truly heal. Catherine, after performing the ritual, no longer feels the weight of doubt or fear that once haunted her. She now knows that her journey was not just about saving the village, but about understanding herself and the strength that resides within her. She was called to fulfill a destiny that, though greater than she imagined, now belongs to her by right. She is the key to balance, the guardian of an ancient pact, and the leader the village needed. With the village safe, she finally realizes that her journey is far from complete. The transformation she has experienced has been profound, but there is much more to be done. Catherine knows that, like the village, she too must continue to rebuild. She looks to the future with the confidence of someone who has faced the depths of darkness and emerged victorious. Henri and Madeleine, now more aware of the role Catherine played, understand that true strength comes not only from protection, but from the freedom to allow their daughter to follow her own path. They embrace her one last time, understanding that although the challenges never end, Catherine is now ready for whatever the future holds. The village in turn is prepared to rise again. Peace has been restored, but the lesson Catherine brought will not be forgotten. They now know that although evil has been defeated, the true challenge is to confront and understand the shadows that live within each of us. And, with that, the village will be stronger than ever before. The sun sets over the village, and peace finally settles. Catherine, now mature and wise, walks through the silent streets, watching life resume its course. The mystery that surrounded the village has been solved, but the transformation she experienced remains alive. The village, scarred by the struggle against dark forces, now rebuilds itself, more united and stronger than ever. Catherine knows that, while evil may have been vanquished, the lessons learned will never fade. True peace, she understands, comes from the constant struggle against inner shadows. And so the story continues. And you, what do you think of Catherine's journey? Did she finally find true peace by confronting her own shadows? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Catherine's story reminds us that often the greatest challenge we face is not in the world around us, but within ourselves. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more stories of mystery, transformation, and overcoming obstacles. And remember, the path to peace begins with the courage to look inward. Until next time.